Elena, you cannot believe how happy I am that we are touching finally base on a topic that is quite important in today's world. So we have teams. They could be remote, they could be working from the office. And how do we find a way to ignite the flame on them? How do we find a way to, people use the word motivate, but is it the right word? And what I wanted to highlight is that very often, and it's written in hundreds of different managerial role books, leadership development role books, is a story about the carrot and the stick. So that people get motivated by financial rewards, which in fact, it is partially true. So when you are doing mechanical works, like working in a factory, the more you pay them, the more they're going to produce, that people are going to be more productive. But when you are working in a job where you need to be more creative, use a lot of thinking power, in fact, the opposite happens. So no matters how much you are going to pay them in terms of monetary reward, people are not going to be more productive. They're not going to have awesome ideas. In fact, it is the opposite that happens. Money only matters when you don't have enough to survive. But after that, it matters less in order to drive performance. There are three things that are super important in order to drive motivation on your team. So first of all, you need to forget about this story that what works for horses works for people. In today's world, people want to have to make choices on how to direct their own life. So basically, we're saying, get out of their way. So find a way so that people get the autonomy that is required in order for them to find their own ways of doing their job. There is a very nice example that I found, and it's a company called Atlassian, the same one who produces Trello, by the way, one of our favorite tools for some, right? So Atlassian, for instance, they have one single day where they propose to their people for the next 24 hours, you can work in anything you want, in any project that you want, with whom do you want? Just show the results. The level of innovation or improvements that this software company has seen is quite amazing. When people do something that they have chosen by themselves, they find ways to pair with people that they want to work with, the level of connections in our brain expands and we feel motivated to do things. So autonomy, or as simple as say that get out of the way on how they want to do things, is super important. There is a second thing that is also quite important. It is let them get better at their stuff. So it is about mastering. So it needs to be, people need to have the possibility to find better ways to do the job. It needs to be incentivized. And it's not money that is going to make them better at the job. Imagine the simple thing is, why do you think people publish so much in Wikipedia? They do it for free, by the way. So these guys, they just want to become better at what they do. They want to showcase to the rest of the world that they are experts in a specific area. Wikipedia, the development of an open source software like Linux, is people who have found extra time outside of their job to go and make it happen because they want to become master of what they do. It simply says, let them find better ways to improve what they do in a day-to-day basis. Encourage this type of behaviors. The final point that is quite important in order that people feel intrinsically motivated. That means that motivation comes from inside of you, not from the outside. It's not about how much money I'm going to generate. Is creating the sense of meaning, purpose in the team. So people does things just because it makes them happy, because it makes them realize that they are doing that beyond just the financial outcomes in their jobs, but because they are doing something in order to create a better society, to have customers that are happy. When you relate the purpose into into a financial vision, the problem is that companies tend to go cheap with bad customer services, with products that are bad. So if you encourage, if you create or craft a vision or a purpose for either your department or for your corporation, people are going to feel like they are doing something that is more important than themselves. Imagine what happens with when a company realizes that they want to create people that are more happy, people to allow them to express themselves. It goes beyond just about the financial perks. There are three things, as I said, that are quite important to generate motivation in your team: is autonomy, mastery, and purpose. If you have these three things, you don't need to think about the monetary rewards. We are humans. As humans, we have an aspirations to be better at what we do. We have aspirations to take decisions by ourselves. And finally, to say, I can choose how I do things, so that I'm more into developing myself in a more continuous manner, grow in my development, and I have taken accountability of my growth in the company.
I love this approach, and I love that these three, I feel it's applicable for any generations and cultural backgrounds, because it just addresses our need as humans to feel that purpose and to feel like we're improving and doing something we truly want to do. And so if we were to put it into action, I imagine it, of course, as with anything that we talk about, is looking at how you can create those little steps. So two things come in mind. So one, moving away from the traditional way we do meetings, when you go into a room and as a manager and you say, this is what we need to do, X, Y, and Z, etc. Instead, even though you might know the answers, but let the team lead, let the people on your team actually lead, and provide ways that they would solve this problem, they would approach this project or situation, right? So it could be as simple as just any project, it could be improvements in the department. So actually getting input from the others and letting them tell you how they would do this, right? And this is where that coaching and mentoring piece comes in, because as a good manager, you should be able to also ask them open-ended questions to help them think through that process. So your employee is not always going to be able to give you X, Y, and Z step-by-step plan, but they will start thinking. It's your job to help them think. It's not your job to give the answers and the to-dos. In most cases, of course, there are going to be situations where you need to kind of just get things done, but it's rare that it happens if you plan accordingly, right? So I think getting the buy-in from the team and asking them how they would approach a situation, or on an individual basis, how would they solve this, whatever it is, letting them be creative, because that will make them feel like they're actually contributing to something. That will help them feel like they have an opportunity to be creative, right? So I think starting with that would be really, really good, and just adjusting as needed. But like you said, the key is to just let people kind of feel that they are there. You're not there to push them to do something. They have come up with their own ideas, and actually you will get much better results when people feel like it's their idea, and when they do it in a way that they can best do it, essentially.
One of the comments that I get very often from leaders is that they are afraid that people will do mistakes if you give them this autonomy, sense of purpose, this mastery of deciding how to do things. But the reality is that it is us reflecting on our internal fears. And that is why, and it's spot on, Elena, to say, why don't we allow ourselves to do these little steps? What if you start creating this half a day where you are going to pilot, experiment these new behaviors in order to reassure first yourself? Why don't you create this half a day where you have specifically a meeting where you let them decide how to do things, where you are practicing moving away from this fear by micro steps that you do in order to let your fear go and say, today they are going to decide how to do the things. And what if you practice that starting as of this week, and you repeat it next week until you feel like at ease to let go? Because this is the biggest friction that leaders have today, is to let go. They think that if they have things on their hands, if they decide how and what needs to be done, they are going to do less failures. But the reality is that without failures, there is no innovation. Without failures, everybody will be afraid of speaking up. And then this is where we have this internal flame of motivation slowly, slowly, slowly decreasing until there is no more flame.